Here's David and Susan. Today, this is going to be a video that's not the fun part. We're going to look at maintenance on your chainsaw. This is something we do every time we go out. Either you got to do it at the end of the day or before you start. And I know a lot of people put it off. A lot of people run a dull saw. You want your saw sharp, you want it where it oils, and you want it running right. So I'm going to turn the camera around here to the tailgate. I usually just work on the tailgate where I have good light, and it doesn't take too long, and we'll kind of go through the routine. Thank you, Susan. And I'm going to spin this thing around, and there we go. This is our little 550, and it's amazing how much we can do with this saw. There, I kind of got my area I can work in. So now, before you start, you're going to be handling chain. When you're handling chain, be sure you've got leather gloves. Because when you're handling a chain, especially after you sharpen it, it will cut you. So, first step I do is I bring out a wedge, lay a wedge down under the bar to support it, for support later. And then you take off your two nuts, back your two nuts off, and take your side plate off and get under a wastebasket. Put this over a wastebasket or go out in the driveway and dig out your dirt. Anyway, I've dug the dirt out of that. It's full of chips, and hose it out good with some PB blaster. Get that clean. Put that aside. Now we've got the chain here. We're going to just set the chain aside, and you've got your clutch right here. And you have to, on a steel saw, you've got to take the clutch half apart to get in here and grease it. But you've got a bearing back there. Just think of it as your throwout bearing on a vehicle. When that engine is idling and the chain isn't running, there's a bearing that spins in there, and it's got to have grease. So you grease that once in a while. And what I do for greasing it, I use my regular old grease gun. Plug that on it, and it just takes a little bit. You don't want to put too much in there, but on Husqvarna, your crankshaft is drilled, and it has a port in there to push grease out into that bearing, and you can feel the grease push back in there. It just takes a little bit, and as long as you're doing that, you've got the bar, and this, you should grease the tip on your bar every few fill-ups at least. And what I use on that, I carry a little Swiss Army knife, open the nail file, dig out that port, give that a shot of grease. Now, steel saws you don't grease, and I don't understand why, but all the other brands grease them. Just takes a little bit of grease. That's done. And while you've got this bar off, I'm going to put my gloves on now. These bars can have sharp edges, so it's good to handle the bar with your leather gloves. Where's the tool? There it is. These little tools, you find them in saw shops and places like Rural King and Tractor Supply, and it has angle gauges and depth gauges on here for working on your saw. But the thing I use it for most, it's got this end here, and you use that to dig out the channel on your bar. Digs out the dirt in there. And after you've done that, you've got two oil ports. You got an oil port there and an oil port there, and it feeds into the top one. I had this bar on like that, so it's going to go back like that, so I need to make sure that oil port is open. So I dig out my Swiss Army knife again, open the nail file, and you run that blade back through there. You can see the tip of that blade. So we can oil. And once in a while, you can get these. This tool is from Bailey's. This is for working on skis, to true up the edges of skis. Works great on a chainsaw bar. What you're looking for an edge along here that'll cut you. And this bar is pretty good. It's not very old, but I noticed out here at the far end, it's got a little ridge right along there that'll cut you. So you take this, just put it on there. And take the sharp edge off of that. That makes it just a little bit safer, because it develops a bit of a razor edge there. So I'm taking that off. And I have had this one little file for over 10 years. Keep it in your toolbox where it's dry, and it should last you a long time. I've had it for well over 10 years. Okay, so this is ready to go back on, and slip that in here. And we're going to put our chain back on. Of course, the chain always gets tangled. There we go. And when you're manipulating that chain, wear your leather gloves. Get that around the sprocket. Put it in the groove. Pull that out and make sure, yeah, she's gonna make sure you're in the sprocket. That's gonna run. And you gotta take this, the adjuster. I like the adjusters on the outside. You gotta loop back that off a little bit. I didn't loosen it before I popped it off, so I'm gonna have to back that off just a little bit. And this goes back on, and it goes right into the bar. These new saws, they have the nuts are caged on there, and that really makes it a lot nicer to work on. You don't lose those nuts. Now what we're going to do is just run those up handy, because we got to adjust our bar. So what I do here, see if I can turn this. See, I put those wedges under the end of the bar to support that. Hold the chain in there and start cranking her up. Okay, as you get close, check and make sure you're running on your sprocket. And we are. And support it at the end. Pull your slack down to the bottom. And just as a rule of thumb, pull that slack down, you'll see that chain hanging down there. Let me see if you can see that okay. Yeah, you can see that hanging down there. Bring that turn that until that chain touches it. And it rolls easy. I usually give it just a little bit extra, not much. You want to have the slack out of it, but you want that chain to run free. So after you get it there, snug these down. You know, the way you tighten your chain becomes more important as you go to a longer bar. When you get a real long bar, you can set that just a little too tight and your saw won't be able to turn that chain. So this is I think 20-inch bar. Pretty easy to set that right. Okay, make sure she runs again. See if the brake works. Brake works. Okay, now we're ready to sharpen it and look at the air cleaner too. Let's look at the air filter. Spin that around. I'll check the view here. Yeah, there we go. If you got an air compressor, that can kind of help, but you know, out in the woods you don't have an air compressor. Pop these off. Pop that off. And if you got an air compressor, you can kind of blow the dirt out of there. I don't have it fired up today, but I just put a new spark plug in a little while back. We don't need to check that. Pop your air cleaner off, and you can just take that, do that, knock dirt out of it. If you got a brush, I like to just take a brush and work on it like that. Blow it out with your mouth. Don't put an air compressor up against it. Just knock your dirt off, blow it off, and they don't tend to get too dirty on these new saws. Once in a while you can take that and go wash it with some dishwashing liquid and let it dry overnight and put it back on. And that's about all you have to do there unless your saw is malfunctioning. One thing I've got, this is I call it compression release. Husqvarna calls it, or Bailey's calls it, decompression valve. That thing's malfunctioning. If I push that, I have zero compression, and I can't start the saw. I have to pull it up by hand. So I've got an order on the way from Bailey's with a new decompression valve for this saw. Okay, now we're ready to sharpen. And the way you sharpen, we've been through this before. I'm going to drop this down so we're getting a little closer look. Gotta see if I can get a picture here. Yeah, let's zoom in on that a little bit. Yeah, we're just gonna do this real quick out here on the end. What you want to look for on these, you point your blades into the sun. As you look into the sun, if you've done any cutting at all, you'll see a little bit of a bright edge. This chain's in good shape. There's just barely a bright edge there. And when these teeth cut, it's cutting on this top plate and on the side plate. You got to have it sharp over here. You got to have it sharp here, and you want your gullet angled just a little bit so that if you drew a line down through the face of that gullet or through the arc of that gullet, it would be perpendicular to the angle on this plate. This top plate's angled just a little bit, and as it goes back, it goes down. And if you don't file correctly, if you get the file too high, you make this top angle blunt. If you push down as you do this and get your gullet down too deep, then you make it too sharp and it gets grabby and it gets dull quick. So you generally, if you're just pushing straight back into that gullet, you're okay. And you've got an angle back here on these teeth that shows you where to go. Or this tool here will show you about the right angle. You want it to be 25 to 35 degrees, about 30. And so you want it blocked down. It's sitting on a wedge here, so it's nice and solid. And you push back into that gullet and push through that tooth. And you do that until that bright edge is gone. Okay, that looks good now. And you come up and do the next tooth the same way. And on this one, there's just a little bright corner. I can see a little bright corner there. So that corner, that point is dulled just a little bit. There we go. It's sharp now. And remember, and check your gullets once in a while. These gullets are lined up just right. If that gullet's lined up right, you just press straight back into that gullet as you go. Now we got two going the same way there. Okay, coming to this one. It's just barely got a bright edge on it. As you push through, keep that file running straight. And you get done with this, you turn it around and do the other side. And you'll hear people say, how often should you sharpen your saw? You never sharpen your saw, you keep it sharp. The trick is, if you don't get in the dirt and you file this thing every time you fill up, it'll always be sharp. Yeah, most of these teeth look really good. 2 or 3 strokes and they're good. This is a peaceful exercise, sharpening your saw. There we go. And if you got a vise, you can put it in and work under a light, and that's even better. But, I do this out in the woods. Back of a tailgate just feels like the right place to do this to me. And a bright sunny day helps because you can see any dull spots really well. Yeah, on this one I can see there's a little bright corner right there. That one needs just a little touch up right there. And now it's sharp. It's got me thinking about sharpening my pocket knives. Everything you read about pocket knives tells you to take that blade and act like you're cutting a slice off the top of the stone. Well, that's backwards to this. That would be like taking this file and try to go through like this. You try that, it doesn't work. It's rough as heck. It makes that file bounces around. When the file is going through like that, it goes through smooth. And just my experience sharpening my saws, there I've gone all the way around, ready to do the other side. The experiences I've had sharpening my saws made me realize that I can make these razor sharp with a file. And you take a fine file and you can make a knife razor sharp. And if you take that file and go opposite what they always tell you to, you get it sharp real quick, real easy. And I've sharpened my knives backwards, what they say now. I go the other way. So anyway, so we've got the air cleaner checked, had a new spark plug recently. We've got that greased. We touched up burrs on the bar. We greased our clutch. We got our chain tension set, and I just have to turn it around now and sharpen the other side of that chain, and we're done. And that's what you do. Now you're ready to fill up with oil and gas, and you're ready to go again. Easy peasy. So that's about all there is to it. It's nice to have something to rest your bar on, and I always just use chainsaw wedges. And now if you need to check your depth gauges, this thing really comes in on that. On this side of this, it has 25, 30, 35, and this chain is supposed to have 28 thousandths clearance. You want 28 thousandths of a cut this tooth can make above that. And so you set this on here. Set this on here and take the tang of my file. I run into that. Set it out here on 35. It runs into it. Come back here to 25. See, it goes over. At 25 it goes over. So I've got more than 25 clearance. And I come up to 30 clearance. Don't quite have 30 clearance. So I'm between 25 and 30. So that's okay. If I could take a stroke down on each of these. It's been cutting real good. As you file these back, they get down closer to this, so you're taking less of a cut. But this chain's still pretty new. But probably the next time I sharpen, I'll do that. You buy a flat file for these that has no cutters on the side, so you don't ding your tooth. And you'll find those in the store right alongside of these files. So anyway, thank you very much for visiting. Hope that helps you a bit. I've got to get out here and do some cutting. See you later.